Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this Economies, Residents and Community Scrutiny Committee on today, Monday, the 18th of March. I'm Angela Davis, the chair of this committee. So we begin our agenda with any apologies for today's meeting. And Rachel, I believe we have two.
We've got apologies from Councillor Liz and Councillor Carl.
Lovely, thank you very much. Item 2 on our agenda is any disclosures of interest. This is to receive any disclosures of interest by members relating to items considered at this meeting today. So any disclosures of interest? We'll take silence to mean that there are none. Thank you very much, members. Item 3 is the declaration of party whips to receive disclosures of prohibited party whips, which a member has given in relation to the meeting in accordance with section 78(3) of the Local Government Measure 2011. Again, I'll take silence to be no declarations. I've got no hands up and no notifications. Thank you very much. So item 4 on our agenda is the minutes of previous meetings. We've got 2 sets of minutes here. So on page 3 from the 30th of January 24, and there we looked at the draft budget, and there was one recommendation that was partially accepted by Cabinet. Is everybody happy with those minutes as they're presented? Any comments? Yeah, so can I seek a proposer and a seconder for those minutes, please? Thank you. Peter, propose, and a seconder. Thank you, Chloe. Thank you. Somebody's got a microphone on. We got a little bit of back noise, but that's fine. Okay, the second set is on page 7, and they're the minutes from the 11th of January. And there we looked at rent setting and some updates on the car park review, the climate report. A number of points were raised, but we didn't have any recommendations as such. Again, are members happy with that representation of the meeting? I'm getting some nods, thank you very much. And again, can I have a proposer and a seconder for those? Thank you. Councillor Gary proposing. And a seconder. For some reason I'm not seeing. Thank you, Peter. Lovely. Okay, so if we're happy with those, we'll move on to the main substantive item on the agenda today, and that's the housing report. And we have with us today Andy Thompson, Head of Housing, and we also have Matt Perry with us today. So we're on pages 15 to 33 of the large pack, and I'm going to hand over to you, Andy.
Good morning, everybody. The report is looking at property maintenance of the municipal housing stock. Basically what homes we have and how we're maintaining them and keeping them compliant with regulatory and statutory requirements. And also, as an adjunct to that, garages. The council still has a municipal garage stock, and what the way that is managed and what the future holds for that particular holding within the council. The report I've sent round summarises the number of homes that we have and the maintenance of those properties. It sets out a number of issues, particularly around the age of our housing stock. As you can see, probably nearly half, or probably more than half our housing stock was built in the 1960s and 1970s, which means it is now heading to the state when it needs a lot of work. You know, there's a general assumption in the construction industry that after 60 years, properties do tend to need a lot of investment in them. One of the main things we're looking to do over the next few years is to reduce the time it takes us to bring properties back into use after previous tenants have left them. We've gone from 160 days to 60 days since we internalised this service from HALPS, and as you can see, we've got a target to get this down to 42 by the end of the next financial year, which starts in a matter of 2 weeks. In terms of garages, this is almost a legacy part of the housing revenue account. Years ago, councils provided garages, generally let only to tenants of the council, housing tenants. Since the right to buy, the tenure mix of garages has changed, so it's a whole mix of people who own their homes and so on, and rent their homes from the council and from other landlords. The garages historically have had very low rents. and they are now heading to the end of their useful life. A lot of them were built using non-traditional forms of construction, concrete panels, so on and so forth. They are pretty much unrepairable when they reach a certain state of decay. As you know, the concrete falls off the frames. In effect, I'm going to be quite blunt with you, we've sweated the asset of garages. They generate an income beyond what we spend on them. But the question is whether or not the council should still be in the business of providing garages. The garages were all built at a time when motor cars were a lot smaller. You cannot get a modern car, even the smallest of modern cars like a Suzuki Ignis or a Dacia Sandero, into one of our garages. So they're not generally used now for storing motor cars. In terms of quality of service, I've included the latest STAR survey, which is an all-Wales study. This takes place across Wales, across all landlords, housing associations and local authorities. So we can, if you will, compare different landlords. And since we've internalised this service, the quality has gone up. We undertake our own surveys as well. Tell us the objectives we report each quarter as part of Stronger, Fairer, Greener and our new tenant survey, and those two are starting to go in the right direction. Compliance is critical, you know, where we have to keep our housing safe. It's one of the key things. Home should be a place of safety. And again, in the last 3 years, we've made big strides with the Compliance 100 project in actually understanding what we need to do. And to be blunt, we had a fairly limited understanding before then, and getting us back to where we should be in terms of maintaining our housing stock to a legally compliant standard. In terms of garages, we have to look at the future. We did conduct a site-by-site review in 2020, and we had 3 options: keep and manage. That's garages that were in, you know, didn't need any work doing to them to keep them used. Keep and repair, where they are repairable, and the other is close and demolish, when garages had reached a state when, because of either low demand, and we do have garage sites that nobody wants, and or poor maintenance, the best thing is to demolish the garages and use the site for other things. The other things being car parking or building new homes, which is something we'd like to explore in the future. I have included budgets from the current financial year and next year. I have to say that next year's are subject to approval tomorrow at Cabinet, so they are included there with that caveat. And I've also included a breakdown by community of where we own all our homes and by type. And what we've done, that is local housing market area rather than communities, because housing markets, as we all know, do tend to ignore administrative boundaries. So the report is there. I think we've made, you know, I would say this, wouldn't I? But I think we've made great strides over the last few years, well, last couple of years, really, in improving the quality of the service we have. We do face big challenges, not least of which, as I say, is the age of the housing stock, and that it is coming up for some big ticket items for repair, which we need to do. Our rents in Powys are, council housing rents are the lowest in the county of all landlords, be that private or housing association. So that really is helping people cope with things such as the cost of living. But it also means if people aren't spending money on rent, they are spending money in the wider community. And I think we're one of I know we're one of the lowest rents in Wales as well among social landlords. So on the one hand, yes, we you know, higher rents mean more money to spend on properties, but on the other hand is if the rents go up, they're not affordable housing, and that kind of defeats the object of why we're here. So it is that balance that I think we've got a compromise between the two. We are building new homes as well. The money we spend on new homes is not taken away from repairs and maintenance, because all the new homes that we build have to cover all their costs. There's no subsidy from within the housing revenue account, and indeed generate a surplus income. So they are actually adding over time to the sustainability of the housing service. We also don't increase the staff when we take on more properties. So actually our productivity is slowly, incrementally, but slowly increasing. So Chair, if that's a brief summary of the report, as I say, the business plan for the HRA does go to Cabinet tomorrow, and subject to Cabinet's view, then that will be published in the usual way after Cabinet tomorrow.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Andy. That was an excellent roundup of the paper. So I'll open the floor now to members of the committee to ask their questions. So Councillor Gary, you're first.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting, good data in that report. It's very clearly laid out, which really helps succinct. So thank you for that. And just to, I guess, start with a celebration of positive movements on the targets that you sort of set within the housing team. Some really good progress against some of those. So well done, you and the team. Obviously, a few to focus on, but that's fine. I understand that. I guess I just want to pick out a couple within table 3.1.6, which is on page 21 of the agenda pack. There's one or two that are slightly confusing to me. The aids and adaptation one towards the beginning of that table. There seems to be two lines for aids and adaptations, but the first one contradicts quite drastically the second line. So it's the third boxes down in that 3.1.6 report, and it tells me, Andy, that aids and adaptations will be delivered within 180 days from the date of occupational therapist referral to certified completion of the work. Target 180, we're at 205. Okay, but the second one then says aids and adaptations will be delivered 90 days from date of occupational therapy. So I can't quite work out in my head what the difference is between those two.
That's an error on my part. That's the size. 180 is major, 90 is medium, and 28 is minor. I do need to correct that.
Okay, so there's different styles of assistance that they might get. Okay,
a major is, major works to the property. So it could be kind of trying to do, ripping out a bathroom entirely. Medium works would be, well, putting a ground floor extension on, for example. Medium might be changing a bathroom to a walk-in, like wet room, and minor would be things like a stair lift or something. A through floor lift would be major because you've got to sort of muck around with the joists and stuff like that.
No,
so I'm sorry about that. I
sense.
should have picked up on that when I was proofreading it.
No, that's fine. And then the other one, I just wanted you perhaps to explain on the same table how the last line correlates back with your figures for the voids turnaround. So you're telling us, which is great, you're doing a really good improvement on the voids turnaround, 160 down to 60, that's brilliant. But the last line in that box tells me the average number of days taken to re-let a council property is taking us 150 odd days. So how's the difference appear?
Okay. The period is from when we get the keys back from the previous tenant to when the new tenant moves in. The figure for this year has been skewed by a number of properties in Llanidloes that we've had empty for many, many years. That skewed the figures. That was a major refurbishment. They'd been built on a form of municipal tip, and we had to totally deal with them. So actually, excluding those properties, we're now running at 60 days. So, but I'm not going to, the figure is all void properties. So for this year, it is 156. You can't pull things out. We've set a target next year for 42. Now that those properties, those flats have finally been let, that will be a lot better. The other thing is to remember, we do within there have the properties in Ostragunnice that are scheduled for demolition. They're void properties at Pennybryn and Isle of Bryn. So we are in the pre-tender stage for that. The last time we put that tender out, we had no competent bids. We had 2 bids, and they were they didn't pass muster with our standards. But we're now hoping, having had a meet the buyer event and revised the specification, hopefully those will be out as well. Because it's a void property, it's still costing us money. So the 60 days relates to the ones that are going to be relet. We only have one property that's up for disposal at the moment, and that also distorts things slightly. So yeah, I want to get us down to that 42.
That makes more sense. I just couldn't quite work out. And then, do you know the rough time it takes between a tenant, so your completion of works, and a tenant physically moving in? Is that
about 2 weeks?
I guess that's
a little under 2 weeks.
So it's a pretty quick turnaround once it's completed.
It's what we're trying to do is pre-allocate. So now that we're doing the work ourselves, we can actually start to get reliable completion dates. So you can actually say to somebody, this property's come empty. The works will be finished in 3 weeks' time. Would you be ready to move in 3 weeks' time? So we're trying to we couldn't do that with Halps, and we're trying to move across to that. We also have dealt with a backlog of voids that we picked up, a legacy of voids. Those flats that I told you about in Lanny are also part of that. Properties that have just been dragged. So yeah, we have to hold our hands up. We should have managed that contract better, but you know, it's much better now the way we're doing it. You know,
Okay,
we've
no,
got to reduce
great.
void times. It's not just money, it's also an empty property is not providing a home.
But we'll see those figures come down in the next
Oh,
report, won't we?
yes,
That's what we're
for
saying.
sure.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Gary. Who's next? Who's got some more questions? Okay, well, while members are thinking through, I've got a few questions for you, Andy. So I was interested on page 17, looking at the table, the ages of the properties. I mean, basically over 50% of our properties are over 60 years old. And I did wonder, in terms of condition, are they the ones that are in the worst sort of state of repair? I suppose it's impacted by when tenants moving out, in and out. I'm making an assumption that most repairs and refurbishments happen with a changeover of tenant. Yeah, so it's not necessarily that the oldest properties are in the poorest state of repair.
Well, we've done WHQS work, so we've probably gone in
Yeah.
and put kitchens and bathrooms into it's fundamental things like roof coverings start to fail away. We've got a big issue at the moment with retaining walls and external stuff, you know, because
Right.
Powys is hilly, as we know. You look at Bronny Buckley, for example, in Welshpool. Retaining walls are a real cost factor to us, particularly those on estates as well, where we've got mixed tenure. So it's just the age, you know, you start to, if they weren't built of the best brick, that's when you'll start to get spoiled bricks at that age, you know. If there's any issues with the joinery, you know, the timber work inside, joists, roofs, trusses, those sort of things start to cause problems. It's interesting that we have some Victorian properties there. Those are legacy properties that the council has inherited from its predecessors, which would have bought properties or acquired properties and so on and so forth. We are looking at, as I say, conducting a full house condition survey, which is actually going to start in the autumn as part of Welsh Housing Quality Standard. And it may be that we decide that some of the older properties aren't really suited for social housing. It would be better selling those and using that money to buy houses like ex-right to buys or build new properties, because they are high. I mean, anybody who lives in a Victorian property, I don't, for the very good reason they are high maintenance. You know, my house looks like a Victorian property, but it's only 20 years old. So, you know, it's that. We are trying to do this on £109 a week rent. We're trying to do everything on that. So, you know, we have to do that. But it does show, what that does show, those figures, is the heyday of when councils built housing. And as you can see, we are now gradually creeping back into the game of building new homes. And that's the other thing to remember. Housing associations have continued to build. So they have newer properties that are generating income, but not generating expenditure. All we have are properties generating expenditure, because we don't have, you know, the offset of those younger properties. So that was always the thing with council housing. Your new properties are generating income to help support the older ones, and then it's a virtuous circle. So it's going to take us a little while to get back to that, but I'm
You're
damn
right,
sure
it's
we
quite
will.
stark, isn't it, to see how few were built from the 80s onward. But I mean, I think it's really good to see that commitment now to increase the provision. And I think we've seen a previous paper about that, haven't we? So, you know, that's the good news. Councillor Peter, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions, Andy, and thanks for your deliverance so far. On the garages, I'm just concerned that are the garages being used for storage, as you said, and are they being monitored for hazardous waste?
That's a very good question. They are being used for storage. People, as part of, you know, they're not supposed to keep hazardous waste in there. We don't have, bluntly, the resource to check every garage to see what's in there. People should not be doing that. They should not be storing, you know, well, just hazardous. It could be hazardous materials, couldn't it? If somebody's a small businessman and is keeping stuff in there, there is a risk there, you know. And short of knocking on every garage door, and I'm sorry, I have to say, there's no way we can do that. It's expected. Technically, a garage should be used to keep a car in. That's what the requirement is. But as I say, unless people are all running, you know, Ford Anglias and Hillman Imps, they're not going to get their cars in the garage.
No,
So
it's just
we
a
know they're
concern.
being used for storage. And you go around some of our estates and garages, some of them haven't been opened in years, you know, weeds are growing up. So my recommendation would be that over time, this is an area of business the council perhaps ought to slowly but surely get away from.
Okay. Thank you for that. And the other part was, you're talking about change of tenants for actually carrying out maintenance. With certain properties, there is the provision of the residents actually staying in their properties and having work done to it. Is there any sort of way that if someone's suffering with asthma or anything, they can be moved out while the work's carried out? And is there a budget for that to put them somewhere?
We do. If the works are major works and it can't be done safely when somebody's in the house, we do decant people to another property. So
And
we do have that. It's based if this works are too disruptive or too injurious to their health, we do decant them. They pay the same rent on the decant property as they would on their existing property, and we have to cover that cost, which is again an incentive to do the works as quickly as we can. So yes, we don't let people stay in a property if it's going to be at risk to their health.
Okay, and the last question really is, with the added of renewables and to maintain properties, is there grants available, and does this help the budget as well overall?
Welsh Housing Quality Standard 2023, which starts in April, is very much focused on decarbonisation. There's a very high cost to doing that to our homes, as it is to every social landlord. At this moment in time, we are not sure what help will be given to us from the Welsh Government to achieve that standard. For 2023-2024, we received a grant of £103,000 to be spread across 5,500 properties.
Yeah,
Right.
that's not much, is it, when you spread that out? Interesting, on Radio 4 this morning was a programme. They were talking about the poor uptake of heat pumps and sort of debating why that would be in British properties, which are generally poorly insulated, I think was the theme. But anyway, yeah, £103,000, that's not going to retrofit every council property, is it? So yeah, a bit of a challenge there. Peter, did you have another question? Your hand is still up.
No, that's it. Thank you very much, Andy.
Right. Lovely, thank you for that. Councillor Rafe, next.
Morning, Chair. I'm sorry if this has already been asked. I was slightly late joining due to some IT issues. Hi, Andy. I'm slightly concerned about the compliance statistics, namely that of LOLA compliance, gas safety certificates, and fire suppression systems.
Sorry, Rafe, you've gone a little bit echoey. I lost you there for a second.
Okay, I'll repeat myself. I'm slightly concerned about the compliance statistics, namely that of the LOLA compliance, gas safety certificates, and fire suppression systems. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm correct in my understanding that there was an initiative called Compliance 100 in the housing service not too long ago. And so if you could kindly give us some background as to is that still an initiative within the service, and the reasons as to why compliance levels are lower than they should be.
Okay.
Okay, so Rafe, you're down on page 22 of the large pack document. So if members want to sort of look where you are. Andy, over to you to.
Okay. Compliance 100 is very much the ethos. That's to try and achieve 100% compliance across every aspect of safety. However, I've worked for a number of landlords and no landlord has ever been able to totally achieve that because we are reliant upon gaining access to properties. These are people's homes, so we do sometimes have problems getting in. And as you can see on the heating, for example, we have people in the non-access procedure. This is when we take people to court because they don't allow us in to service their equipment. And that is generally why we can't get 100%. So we are being quite robust now, going to court, getting an injunction and getting into a property to make sure that properties are serviced. As you can see, the heating compliance is going up. I'd love it to be 100%. But you always have, for some reason, some of it's quite legitimate. People are at work, they can't get time off. Other people just don't take it seriously to get in there. In terms of fire suppression, that is not good. That we are letting a new contract at the moment for fire safety. Hopefully that will improve the quality of the service. We do have a limited market to go to for that. So we are hoping that will improve dramatically once we get the new contractor in place. I would say that we do go around this is purely for communal areas. We do inspect those regularly. Our own staff go around and check them to make sure the equipment works. Fire doors, firefighting equipment, fire doors are something that we're going to have to replace over the course of 5 years. Firefighting equipment has gone down, although the general view from the fire service is that people should not be using fire extinguishers unless they know what they're doing. But you're right, that does need to improve, and there is a new contract in there for that. As you can see from Lola, again, we inherited this from previous people. We did an audit, and we found that there were 7 additional lifting items of which our previous provider had not made us aware of. So we've included those in there into the statistics, and we will be checking those. Again, we have to gain access to these properties. You know, we have to go in, and if people don't let us in, we have to take the necessary action to, in a court to get a court order so we can actually get in there. It's not very nice, but we have to put safety first. So we have to go to court with people. Generally, when people receive that notification, people tend to book appointments, but unfortunately, not everybody does. So yeah, there's room to improve, but the overall over the last 3 years is a dramatic improvement. Plus, we know a lot more about our properties now than we ever did before.
That's really beneficial. Thanks for the explanation, and look forward to seeing the statistics improve in future reports.
Lovely. Thank you, Rafe. Councillor Gary.
Thanks, Chair. I was just going to revisit the sort of comments or questions around garages, I guess, Andy. I think you've been very honest. I think it's very clear in the figures. We have sweated these for a great number of years, over £500,000 in income in garages, and we're spending £6,000–7,000 a year on repairs and maintenance to them. They've obviously got a purpose and a use for many residents, but I think we all know as councillors as well, many garages are not owned necessarily, or not used necessarily by the tenants that they were intended for, and they pass sort of ownership chains many times down the line, even if somebody is still sort of paying the annual rent. I guess it's an interesting conundrum, isn't it, really, of we know they're failing in terms of what they were originally intended to do, and actually arguably they're not meeting that original intention at all, and therefore is it something we should or shouldn't be doing? But the income is clearly a help to the HRA account. Get that, but maybe I was just thinking that maybe it's we try and organise a separate sort of members briefing session about almost garages specifically, and say, look, we've got a bit of a question here about how they do or don't get managed, because certainly the ones in my ward would be far better being demolished and used for additional parking, because on-street parking is really problematic, and the garage takes up a really awkward space in many of the estates that I've got in my small rural sort of estates, if you like. So whether you could seek some support from members, just because, like you said, it's going to have to be on a case-by-case scenario now, really, whether members could come forward with alternative. And I'm aware that there's others that may be suitable for temporary accommodation, those modular homes type opportunities, or all sorts of other reasons. But I know tenants will be fairly, I've had that for 30 years. I don't want to get rid of it. Thank you very much. It is full of my stuff, question mark. So yeah, just perhaps something to think about, whether we did a specific piece of it. I know it's not a priority. It's not huge amounts of budget, but I think we could probably make it sweat in other ways more than just finances. Thank you.
The issue with demolishing garages is they often have because of their age, they have asbestos in them, and it actually costs quite a lot of money to demolish them and make use of them safely. They would be good for modular, subject to planning permission. I was talking with my counterpart at Monmouthshire this morning before this meeting, and they've been looking at some of their car parks, but they have the same challenge that we have, is that we have to get planning permission. So, he's going to put me in contact with a company that they've been using who will do feasibility studies for modular on car park sites. So we'll see where that goes. It'd be great, we could use them for modular while we get planning permission for the main houses, which would be cool. It's the cost of demolishing them, I'm afraid, in some cases. People in garages have no security of tenure. It's not like a council house. It's, we can serve notice, and as long as we do that correctly, we can take possession. But it's an argument, it's almost better being used than not being used and then attracting vandalism and so on and so forth while we work out where we go. So gradually, as they fade away, oh, this is too expensive, or it's just a nuisance, we move them. But it's the asbestos. If they've got asbestos in them, by gum, that is a challenge, as we all know, But yeah, I agree with you. It's reports will have to go to members, and yeah, small sites, you could get 4 houses on them or 2 bungalows, that and a bit of car parking. Be really cool for the people in the community, wouldn't it?
Thank you.
I would like to see it mapped, because like Councillor Gary, I can think of some garage locations in my ward that would really be beneficial in helping that parking issue. I mean, as you know, Andy, we've got an area where an emergency vehicle couldn't get through if they needed to because of the parking situation. But we've missed a trick in a way, because we've got 1,690 garages. At current rent, that should have been over £1 million coming into the HRA budget. But really, we're only letting, what, about 50% of the garages? So it's an odd one, because we've got 801 voids, which I'm guessing either are not lettable, or are they not in an area where someone wants a garage? Because we've got 856 on the waiting list.
Yeah.
So there's a mismatch there, isn't there? I can see Councillor Matthew's got his hand up. Want to come in there, Matthew?
Thanks, Chair, and apologies for being late. I had some IT difficulties this morning. I think what we're saying is we're open to alternative use for the garage sites, but it has to be affordable for the housing revenue account. So the commitment and the assurance is there. We are open to exploring alternative uses as it is affordable for the housing revenue account. We will do that work behind the scenes as the business opportunities arise for those, but it will also fit with the stronger, fairer, greener strategic equality plan that we've established. So if it helps meet the commitments that we've set out and the ambitions for our communities, we will take those. And nothing is off the table in respect of that. We'll do what's right for the tenants and the HRA.
I think we're largely in support, Matthew. I think that's the point. I think we're all of like-minded here. We've got a missed opportunity on that rent, because maybe some are not rentable, so that's, as Andy says, if some of those could be housing properties, well, that helps with a separate issue and brings in revenue. I'm
afraid I disagree, Chair. It's not a missed opportunity. We are looking for those opportunities. And as we bring in forward the business cases, we've got the capital in place for the modular homes. We now need to put the business case forward to be able to secure the revenue to deliver those. And when we've got those things in place, we'll be looking at the sites to be able to develop those schemes. So we're not missing an opportunity here. We're absolutely scanning the horizon to take every opportunity for the long term.
Well, I think you have to accept the opportunity has been missed. If you've got 856 people wanting to rent a garage and you've got 801 that are empty, I think that did need exploring. As I say, I celebrate and recognise the fact that the work is being done now, and I think that is really, really positive. And I think, as Andy says, there's going to be different solutions in different areas, and that was my initial point, that it would be interesting to see this map against a map of powers to say, well, which ones are suitable for what? And I'm guessing there's going to be different solutions in different areas according to the need. But you can't say that having 801 empty garages wasn't a missed opportunity somewhere along the way. But we'll move on. I think you've made the point, and that's fair enough.
If Scrutiny requests the map, we will absolutely do that. We can provide that information as soon as it's requested.
Yeah, that'd be fabulous. So with regards to that then, Andy, you're looking at all the different options available for reusing and repurposing these sites, or maybe repairing garages where possible. And that could come from that rental income. Looking at the little chart on the
with demand, it's not always consistent. You can have, say, a block of garages with nobody wants the 6 that are empty, but you've got 6 people in them. There's, as Councillor Lawrence has pointed out, we have to cost in the cost of demolishing them.
Yes.
And making sure we can, that is quite a major impact on us in terms of making sure that stacks up. What we're trying to do is, as you say, look at each site site by site. I say we've done that site by site review in 2020, which does set out an idea for what we do with the sites. The other thing I've also got to bear in mind is that, as I've said earlier, as we've seen, we are milking this asset. We are making money for the HRA that is going into wider areas of activity. So in a way, what we're doing is we're sweating an asset we know has got a limited lifetime. We're maxing out the income on it, which is going into housing, the homes that people have. And as the sites start to fade away due to condition, because you can do patch repairs for so long, and then you get to the point that it's not patchable, right? As the ones in, your own ward council, I and Matt looked at, and demand just fades away. I don't think we should be in the position of offering it for storage, as I think Councillor Pete said, there's a risk of hazardous stuff. There could be issues here around health and safety. We don't knock on every door. We all know of cases when garages have been broken into and really strange things have been found in there. Not, I think, in Powys, but in other parts of the country. So we are managing these basically as a cash cow, but also as a land asset that can be used for other things as they start to fade away. Right now I've had the staff for the last 2 or 3 years focused very much on managing housing, particularly in terms of homelessness and in terms of COVID, and getting the new build programme. These are assets. The land is an asset. What is on the land is becoming a liability, but it's still generating a decent amount of income. I don't know if anybody here is in transport. It's like sweating your lorries till they fail their test each at the end of the year. Then you chuck them away. So you just sweat them.
Yeah, and it's great that this work is being done now to look at that going forward and improve the situation, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. I've got no hands up there. I'd like to go. Oh, right, Rafe. Sorry, would you like to come in?
Sorry, I just put my hand up that second minute. Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one, Andy. When will the HRA business plan be published for this year?
It goes to Cabinet tomorrow, and subject to Cabinet's decision upon the HRA business plan and the associated narrative, if Cabinet approve it, then it can be published then. It has to go to Welsh Government by the 31st of March. It would be inappropriate for me to preempt the discussion, the debate and the decision of Cabinet, but it's an open meeting, Cabinet, and it will be, as I say, it goes, Cabinet considers it about this time tomorrow morning, I think, if I've got my calendar right, which I hope I have.
Yeah.
Sure,
I think that's correct.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Chloe.
Thank you, Chair. I might have missed this in the report, so apologies if I have done, but I wondered if there are plans or targets to increase the housing garage stock for the council across Powys at all, or whether the main plan is just to keep what we've got or get rid of it or reuse it basically as we're going through.
We don't propose at this stage recommending to members that we increase. We propose that this is an area of activity that we gradually disengage from. We're a housing authority. To build garages of a size that would fit modern cars would cost, and to make them safe, would cost a fair amount of money. I don't think we'd get a payback on that probably for 30 odd years. And I'm not sure, it goes to matter for members to decide whether or not, in terms of our priorities, it's housing that we probably need to do. In terms of storage, I mean, Powys is quite a rural area, so it hasn't got the kind of the big red box thing that you see as you go down the M6 past Wednesbury, all those big storage places. We don't have those, but we're a local authority, we're a public service, and I think at this stage my recommendation is we focus on homes. The garages are something that we just gradually pull away from. If there is a market for that at commercial rates, and commercial rates are probably £20–25 a week for a garage, then I guess market forces will provide for that. But it's not something I would recommend at this stage to members, that we with all the other priorities that we've got, that it's something we perhaps want to go for. But obviously the decision would rest with members.
There may be a business opportunity. Sorry, Chloe. Come on. Sorry, you come back first.
I just wanted to make sure I understood on that. So you're not, that makes complete sense, obviously, not to increase the garage stock if they're not going to have a sensible sort of payback time period. But is that the same case then for housing? We wouldn't be looking to increase the housing stock for the council across Powys?
No, housing's different. We
okay.
are a housing authority. We have a 60-year payback for housing, which relates to the age of the housing. We don't build or require anything if it cannot have paid back all the costs, and that's not just the debt, that's all the running costs within at least 60 years. If 60 years, I would never recommend to Councillor Dorrance or to Section 151 officer that we would ever do anything that goes for more than 60 years unless there are absolutely totally extenuating circumstances. Council housing historically was funded over 60 years. If you go right the way back to the pre-war and early post-war period, the idea being house lasts 60 years and you're doing it. When I worked for a housing association as a project director, we had a 30-year payback because that's what the banks imposed on us. So, we had to pay mortgage. Most of us, I haven't got a mortgage now, but I did have a mortgage. It was over 25 years. So, it's basically that. So the 60 years also allows for the fact that our rents are £109. So our debt repayment is correspondingly less. When you think about that over the course of a month, that gives us £440. God, I'm trying to do my maths here. £440 to pay everything. So that's why the 60 years is important. But yeah, we do want to improve. We have a target, as you know, in Stronger, Fairer, Greener of at least 350 new homes. And that's in addition to acquisitions. I'm confident and hopeful we can exceed that so that in 5 years' time, when we publish that chart showing the age of our housing, we'll start to see the later years resembling the earlier years. And with 4,000 plus people waiting for council housing, it's definitely a demand.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking, Andy, just going back to garages, do you have an issue with things getting left? So people abandoning their rental garage and leaving all their belongings?
Yes. Yeah, we haven't actually found a Ferrari hidden in a garage like the barn finds that some people have. Because if we did, I'd probably put a tenant. Anyway, by the way, we won't go there. But no, sadly, what we get is just horrible junk that's just left. And
that's a cost to the council then?
We try and recharge people. We do make a point of that. We do not expect tenants to pay for other people's misbehavior, and we try and pursue that as best we can. But it's just it's not even stuff you could take. Boot fairs don't take place anymore, do they? Sadly, but it's not stuff you could even take to a boot fair, I'm afraid.
And did I read in the paper that neglect of property is recharged to former tenants?
Sorry, go on.
Does that work? How successful is that? It does.
Well,
work.
If it's damage, if a tenant has purposely damaged or deliberately neglected, and you've got to bear in mind, fair wear and tear, age of property, so on and so forth. If a property has been damaged, somebody's deliberately kicked the doors or deliberately broken, we do recharge. We get about, most landlords, we're about the same. You generally recover about 20% of that, because the main incentive you have to recover that money is if somebody joins the waiting list again and then wants another home, because hold on a minute, we do need to have a conversation here about what you left behind. But we do, because it's not fair on other tenants, because the money we're spending putting that right means we're not spending money on their homes. It is completely wrong. You wouldn't trash a hotel room when you're on holiday, would you? Or wreck a hire car. So why should you damage a council house?
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Peter.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just interested, how many properties are single units? I'm just thinking, with the garage situation, and especially with Help the Homeless, is there a point that we could actually turn them into single units for people that are in need?
I don't think any of the type of garages we've got, their construction would in any shape or form
be serviceable.
Turned in. No, that's happened under permitted development rights in England, and there have been some appalling places. Going back years when I worked for the Audit Commission, and I did an audit down in Luton. Homes in sheds, it was called. Basically, people were turning garages and sheds into housing and because it's commutable out to London, making shed loads of dosh. No, I'm sorry, I don't. I would not be happy recommending that at all to members.
It was just a thought that under the the properties and whether there's enough single properties there. Okay, thank you.
We need more single properties for sure, for single smaller households, but garages and just by the time you've converted, you might as well knock them down and build new homes.
I was thinking that if they were knocked down, whether they could be actually single properties that way. I'm just thinking that.
Yeah, I'd love to build on them as long as we get planning permission.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Rafe.
Thank you, Chair. Andy mentioned a staggering number of people who are waiting on the waiting list for a council home, and
sorry, Rafe, I don't know about the members, but you're very echoey. I don't know if you've got two microphones on or something.
I don't. Forget about me for a second. Let me put my headphones on. Hopefully that sorts it out. If you move them to the next person, that'd be great.
I think that would be a good move. Thank you, Rafe. Another thing then I was going to ask you, Andy, in the survey, the tenant survey, the responses on satisfaction, they showed that working age tenants are less satisfied. And I wondered, do we know? Have we got any? Is it to do with this issue of gaining access when they're at work? Do they find it harder to contact the council because they're at work? I just wondered, do we have any idea why?
We're trying to find that out. Probably, we're thinking working age tenants are generally younger. Younger people tend to have higher expectations. There is, I think, an issue around contact. Oh, I've had to take a day off work, whereas if you're retired, it's, I'm heading close to retirement myself. You're going to have more time. Well, we can't actually pin it down to any one reason. I think, younger people, it's a factor of human life, isn't it? My standards for life are higher than my parents, and my children have higher standards than I, just in general for things. We want to get it up. We want to get the whole service up, but I'm happy that we're at long last moving in the right direction. We tend to find, also contact and communication, working age tenants less satisfied. Again, it might be that we have to take account of, people being at work, do we have to consider as a local authority, not just for housing, is Monday to Friday appropriate? I don't know. That's a matter for members, but we have to think about how working life patterns have changed. The first local authority I worked for, which is like ages ago, we were expected to work evenings. I was expected to go out and inspect voids and let properties up until 8 o'clock at night.
But
that was a unique local authority.
Tenants can make contact by email.
Yes, we have email, we have phone, 24/7 phone contact. We've got a Facebook page, we've got a website. We want to make it as easy as possible. They can check their housing application online. We're putting a new ICT system in for the whole service, hopefully by 2026. So hopefully that means people will be able to check repairs on that. There's a lot going on, but people now, it is a 24/7 society, isn't it? My son insured his car yesterday on a Sunday. When I was young, the only thing sold on Sunday was the Sunday Express and apples.
And I mean, obviously that is important that we have different methods for people to keep in touch, and that's two-way. And I will just make a comment that the magazine you send out to tenants, I think that is excellent. It really is. There's a selection of good news stories, competitions, things. So I hope that tenants do engage with that. I know it goes electronically, but I just wondered, for the older tenants, is there an option for them to have that in paper form? There is. Matthew's nodding. Okay, so lovely. Matthew, you've got your hand up. Did you want to come in anyway there?
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the feedback on the tenant magazine. It does go to tenants by paper form. We don't have email, etc. for them. And what's really important about that is tenants play a massive role in its design and its content. So it's tenant-led, and I think that's a real strength for it. Just want to thank you for the questioning on the STAR survey, which I think is a really important line of questioning, because despite our increasing performance in this area, there is still some lessons that I think we need to understand and learn from the data, and that area of a consistent lack of satisfaction for working age tenants is something that we have to understand as a service to be able to improve. And I do think there's something that we need to do around making sure the council is accessible all the time, and we work with people rather than working for the council. So we need to understand what the needs of communities and our population are, and we need to be able to respond to that. And if that means changing the way that we offer repairs and maintenance, then I think we'll need to explore how we do that, because we are a people-led service. So we need to be able to respond to the needs of people.
Yeah, thank you for that, Matthew. And the other one on that, sort of connected with that, in table 3.1.6, we're talking about the improving the EPCs. So the number of council-owned homes with an EPC improved from a D, E, F or G to an A or B. So currently, is the standard a C for a rental property?
We're trying to. C is acceptable. I think we can accept.
Right.
That's the interim measure for WHQS 2023. Yeah. So, but we'd like to get to A or B. You know, C is pretty average. Okay, well, it's pretty good compared to a D, E, F or G. But we'd like to get above that to an A or a B. A is extremely expensive to do, and also you got to look at the technical. You know, there are some property types that will never make it to A. There are some that will never make it to B. So we're looking at an average here. But you know, if you don't aim for the stars, you'll never learn to fly. So that's why I want us to look at A and B if we can.
And obviously that's a crucial element, isn't it, in making homes affordable for people to run after in terms of their, you know, heating costs, etc. So on that chart, sorry, it says the target is 84. So there are 84 properties that need to be...
Sorry, so it should be percentage. I do apologise. Should be percentage. No, not 84 out of 5,512.
I was going to say,
a little more ambitious than that.
Super job, or yeah, okay. So there's still quite some way to go, really, on bringing the properties up.
Aging housing stock, councillor. Aging housing stock. Sorry,
there is some way to go, and we've got to accept that and be ready for the challenge. But we've also got, as Andy says, quite an old housing stock with nothing that had been built for 30 years, and now a very new housing stock that meets lots of energy efficiency requirements. So there's a big difference between the two and the standard that people have got. But we've got one eye on WHQS coming at us, and we know that the minister has said WHQS is going to have a huge focus on energy efficiency and making homes better for the environment and in their carbon emissions. So we need to be mindful of that and cognizant of that as that's coming down the line. We'll have a further challenge in delivering on this agenda.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for that. Councillor Rafe, hopefully we can hear you now. Come on in, Rafe.
I hope you can hear me now. Is that better?
Perfect.
Great. Andy mentioned, Chair, a few minutes ago, the huge number of people who are waiting on the waiting list for a council home, and you know, seeing as the build programme for the service is such a huge part of what the housing service does, I would appreciate the opportunity for the Scrutiny Committee to have sight of that plan and the opportunity for scrutiny to take place on it as well, if possible.
There we are. Matthew and Andy are both nodding away there, Ray. So I think that's going to be fine.
Yeah, we'll take advice on that. I haven't got a problem with it. It's just whether we can do it in open or closed session around commercial sensitivities of land acquisitions, etc. But no problem with the principle.
Yeah, I'm so glad we're back in the business of building council houses again. You know.
And I think you mentioned previously, Andy, that actually housing isn't a statutory service, but as a council, Powys County Council have decided it is something very much that we want to deliver in-house.
Homelessness is statutory. Yeah. All local authorities, regardless, and this is across Wales and Wales and England, have to provide a homeless service to help people. They have to provide a housing advice service. They have to provide a service to enforce standards in privately rented accommodation, and also to take note of the condition of privately owned. So that includes owner occupation houses. There is a statutory requirement to provide aids, adaptations or disabled facilities grants. It's all one and the same, it's just different names for people who need help to stay in their home, you know, if they're disabled and what have you. So there's a lot of statutory functions. So if you're a stock transfer authority like Ceredigion, for example, where I live, you still have, and Monmouthshire, whom I was speaking to earlier today before this meeting, you still have a lot of statutory duties to do. Half the authorities in Wales have opted to privatise their housing to housing associations and are no longer landlords, and that is roughly the same in England as well. Because you don't have to be a landlord, but you still have to do all those other things that I've said, and that includes finding homes for homeless people to whom you owe a duty. A number of landlords in England that have done the stock transfer are now thinking of going back into the business of being a landlord. And that could either be by reopening a housing revenue account, or, as Telford and Wrekin have done, set up a housing company, which is, to all intents and purposes, a housing revenue account, but not quite legally. But they are now quite a major player in housing provision in Telford. And I understand that the Welsh Government is considering, at a meeting I've got with the heads of Welsh Government shortly, one of the things on the agenda for all the heads of housing is those authorities that aren't landlords, do they wish to become landlords again? Because it does give you that extra
control.
Yeah, but also, again, I was talking with my colleague at Monmouthshire this morning, councils can sometimes go where angels fear to tread, because we can do things that housing associations might not wish to do. And there, yeah, absolutely. And of course, there may be opportunities for Powys if our neighbours, because a number of our neighbours are stock transfer, Neathport Talbot, Gwynedd, Ceredigion. Gosh, I don't think we've got a neighbour that's a landlord. I'm just thinking that.
Okay.
We probably have somewhere, but help there. You know, there's scope. And I think, yeah, it's not a statutory duty to be a landlord, but all the things that you need to do by being a landlord are statutory. It's almost as if, you know, cutting your leg off and sending you out to the crease to run a 6.
And given our stronger, fairer, greener commitments, if we're able to improve on those EPC ratings, if we're providing the lowest rent across Powys, and, you know, if we have a range of housing in the right places, then we're going to meet those for our most needy residents, really, aren't we? So that, I mean, I think that is to be applauded. But I guess that takes us very smoothly on to page 28, 4.3, and the finance of it all.
Yes.
Because, you know, sort of a bit alarming. So really, if you could talk us through that table, because the first one there sees a sort of major drop in finance, and just wondering, how is that going to impact on the service delivery, really?
Well, in the current year, we're obviously picking up a lot of repairs that we inherited from the Haupt days still, believe it or not. So that's why and also we're getting more efficient at doing them. So and I have to say the figures for next year are subject to approval by Cabinet. So it is a reduction. The other thing to remember is that we don't account for now within the day-to-day repairs, wages, salaries, and so on and so forth, because they are accounted for in staffing costs and vehicle replacement costs now. So gradually, as we transition over to the new world of direct provision, it's improving and getting there. The other thing I haven't included in there, of course, is we've got additional programs. So, for example, we have the Green Powys program that's designed to make properties more energy efficient, but it's also a focus on greening our estates as well in a sensible and pragmatic way. So it's not just leaving everything to go wild, it's making sure that we have a focus on planting trees, shrubberies, and generally things like that. Love Where You Live. That also includes estate management, and that is a big focus this year on improving the quality of estate management. I mean, Matt's already aware of our ambitions there, grass cutting and generally looking after the estates. You know, things slipped during COVID, naturally, because of the way things are. We need to improve on that. Fit for Life is another program. Again, that focuses on improving and making homes better places to live, particularly if you're disabled or you need improvement. So level access, you'll have seen those, the ramps, you'll have seen level access showers. And the big one is WHQS capital program, and that's your planned maintenance, arguably. So that's bathrooms, kitchens, and the big ticket energy efficiency works that we also need to take into account the cost of running systems. You know, the main thing that motivates people, all of us, is the wallet. And if we can reduce heating costs, that's what makes the big difference to people. And the best way to do that is to reduce the need for heat and energy. So as I say, the full business plan goes to Cabinet tomorrow, and subject to Cabinet's decision, that will be a public document thereafter.
So thinking about sort of the refits for kitchens and bathrooms, when we refit a kitchen, do we provide the white goods, the cooker, etc.? No. So it's purely the fabric of the building, the cupboards, etc.
Sorry,
Matthew.
Can I just make a really important point on that? Because I know that people do struggle with obtaining white goods, and they're important for just being able to get by day to day. There is a scheme called the Discretionary Facilities Grant from Welsh Government. And if people are struggling to be able to afford those, they can approach the housing officer who can help them with an application to that. And it does cover things like fridge freezers and washing machines.
And we also recycle furniture that we find in properties if it's good quality through the catering and cleaning team, and we do make that available to people. Obviously, it's got to be safe, it's got to be good stuff, but we do, we're appropriate. It's difficult to set up a home, first time home.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, any more questions from the committee there? So Councillors Adrian and Councillor Brian, you've been quiet today, but you're happy. Oh no, Adrian's got his hand up. I thought, Adrian, that's not like you. Do come on, please, with your questions.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just a bit confused about voids times and key to key times. There seems to be a bit difference. In one table, it says it's 12.5 weeks. You've got it down from 22. In the other table, it's saying it's 156 days. And the target is 40 going forward. So I just don't see, the figures don't tally up. So which is it?
Okay, the 156 days, it takes account of some long-term properties that we've had in Llanidloes that have been empty for many years. So when we're talking about reducing the time that we're now running at 60 days, we've taken those out. But in a formal position, you've got to include in a table that goes to the quarterly meetings, we have to include all the properties. So those properties that have taken us many years to get right, they're built, I think, on an old refuse tip, are included in there. Plus, that also includes properties scheduled for demolition in Penny Bryn and Isla Bryn in Ustragunlais. Right now, properties that are being turned around, normal, that means not major works, not held for demolition, not held for disposal, running about 60 days. So I want to get that down to 42, and then we'll review that target and see if we can make that tighter. We inherited, and we still running voids through the system a lot quicker than we used to. Key to key time also includes the time it takes to get, allocate the property, and we've got that down for when the property is ready to let to when the new tenant gets in to 2 weeks. So it's, the figures do look a bit confusing, but I'm not going to massage it and say 156 take off this in a formal table. We've still got those properties in Llanidloes. We've still got 40 odd properties in Penny Bryn and Isla Bryn. We had 2 tenders to demolish those last year. Neither passed muster with the council standards. We're going out again. It's pre-tender stage at the moment, and don't want to disclose any commercial confidentialities, but I'm expecting a much better response. They will be dropped, new homes will be built on those sites, and that will reduce our void time and give us more homes in Ustragunlais, which is becoming quite a boom town at the moment.
Thank you. Just another thing I'd like to ask. I mean,
Yeah,
I'll put this out there. A lot of the houses, they're 60s and 70s, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're in business, you might think there's a case to put forward that you'd sell all those to a housing association or something, or tenants, use the money, save the money you're having to spend to get up to standard, and build brand new spanking homes at any efficiency and crack on. You'd have more houses in Powys. They won't be in our hands possibly, but the whole point is to have more houses. Wouldn't that be something to consider, really? I mean, it sounds simple, but that's the way it'd be if you're in business, sort of thing.
Yeah, Councillor Matthew is itching to come in there with a response, so please do.
Thanks very much. We've had this question put to us a number of times this council term by members, and we don't have any plans at all to sell our social housing stock. We firmly believe that the council is the best placed provider of social housing, working with our partner landlords through the Strategic Housing Partnership. We will continue to do that. We have an extensive building programme for a local authority, and we are committed to building new homes, but we're also buying homes into our housing stock that are coming up for sale in the right place that meet local housing need too. So I think a combination of all those strategies will help us deliver the outcomes that we want, that provide local affordable homes in our communities, that help us tackle poverty in the county. But I think it's important for me as Cabinet Member for Housing to give our tenants the assurance that there are absolutely no plans under this administration to sell our council homes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm just flicking through my card. I've got no more hands up, and I'm just making sure we've ticked off all the questions and queries we had. I think we're about there now. I think, Matthew, thank you very much. You've put the link to that discretionary assistance grant in the chat. So I think that's quite a useful one for us to know as local members. So thank you very much for that. Yeah, I think I would just like to reflect that overall, I think this is a really positive report. And although I picked on you about the garages, we're talking historical there, and we're talking now looking forward as a council, aren't we? I think there's been an awful lot of work done across the council in assessing where we are. And perhaps we're surprised or not surprised by conditions. If we haven't been maintaining, we shouldn't really be surprised to find that our properties are in a poor condition. But I think it's really pleasing to see that the timelines are coming down for things like the voids, that we understand the condition of our buildings now. We've got a plan to improve them. I think we'll find that there's never enough money in the pot to deliver on that. It's going to be interesting to see the outcome of those garage reviews that you're doing. I think, as you've said, there's going to be a variety of answers in different sites across the county. And I'm really, really pleased, as I've already said, about the communication with tenants. That magazine, I think, is really superb, and I'm pleased to hear that that does go out in paper format to those who want it. That's a good way to engage. And I also read in there, didn't mention earlier, that you do telephone those residents who are not so keen to use email or other methods. And I think that's really important as well, that we make sure that not everybody has access to or wants to use modern technology, so we mustn't leave people behind. So yeah, thank you very much for that. I don't think there's any more for us to say. I don't know if any of my committee have any further comments they would like to make. No, everybody's looking happy. So thank you very much for that paper, Andy, and we note that it goes to Cabinet tomorrow, so we'll see what the outcome of that is. So thank you, Matt, and thank you, Andy, and thank you, Matthew, Councillor Matthew.
Thanks, Chair. We enjoy the challenge. It makes us better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. So the next item on our agenda is the reports from the working groups, and we have the first one we have on our agenda here is the leisure review, and we have Councillor Gareth Jones, who was the chair of that working party, here with us, and I believe we've got Councillor David Selby. Is he here with us as well? So I'm going to hand over to Councillor Gareth Jones to take us through this report. Welcome, Gareth.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members, for allowing us to come and present this today. Jenny Ashton is also the lead officer, is also in attendance in the meeting, so Jenny will pick up many points that I won't make. I think the first thing I should say, it's important to note that this review was around the process undertaken and not the outcomes of the next steps of the leisure review. So I think that took us as members a little time to get our head around that process. I think we had quite a number of members, including myself, that we're expecting at the start we were coming up to say, this is what we're proposing to do to leisure centre X, swimming pool Y, etc. I'm not going to go through it in much detail, Chair, because it's there as it is. I think it's fair to say that that officers provided us a very comprehensive set of data, including the data around the condition survey work undertaken on the leisure centre in Astraganlais and the swimming pool in Astraganlais. And just for members to know, the reason why we chose Astraganlais was deliberate, because we didn't have a member on the review group that actually came from the Astraganlais area. So we felt it was an easier way to actually look at a centre that nobody had a particular personal interest in. The content of the report is there. This report is actually going to Cabinet tomorrow. I hadn't picked that up until Jenny sent me an email, I think, over the weekend. So, but I am actually going to the Cabinet just in case there's any questions around that. It was, as I said, it was quite, we started the review in June and completed it just around Christmas. So it was a little bit longer than I expected it to be. You will see the outcomes and concerns and observations we made, and the recommendations that we've actually made to go to Cabinet within the report, which was that when Scrutiny is undertaken the final report, that members should have the full financial detail. As part of the review, we were shared some financial information on the contract with Freedom Leisure, but not all the information on contract with Freedom Leisure. And in my mind specifically, I don't think we had the split between wet and dry use in the schools. As part of the review, we also had some input from the manager of the leisure facilities in Crickall High School, which is outside the Freedom Leisure contract, and also from one of the trustees of the swimming pool in Hay and Wye. Two very different models, but I think also models that had their unique challenges as well. The one in Crickall was clearly the leisure facilities were largely used by the schools. There's no swimming pool at the site, so it was just a dry facility, and they were gaining from extended use from residents of Monmouthshire from Abergavenny area, while the facilities in King Henry's are being redeveloped. This is our understanding. Sorry, I'm just looking through. Yeah, and I mentioned the detail about the schools' use of swimming pools. And the final point recommendation that we made was to ensure that the total cost of delivering the school curriculum for leisure services for sports, especially swimming, was known as part of the final report. And I know one of the members of the cabinet has actually raised that issue. Apparently they were not aware that parents were paying for the cost of transport for children to go swimming from some of our more rural schools, or those schools in areas where swimming pools don't exist within the village or town where they occupy. I think we had quite a successful review. It was a little bit time consuming, and I look forward to the next steps and happy to answer any questions you have, Chair.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much for that, Gareth. So members, anybody got any questions on that report? We're all happy with that report? Oh, no, Councillor Rafe.
Sorry, Chair, this isn't really specifically on the report, but I'm relatively new to this, joining the council in November. What are the next steps of this?
Well, well, Councillor David Selby or Jenny are here, so perhaps you'd like to outline what happens next.
Sorry, I'd gladly jump in, Angela. The next steps are that this report and the work done on the leisure review forms part of the sustainable Paris work that we're doing. It's informed, we've got the data, it informs and helps those decisions as we go forward.
So this report in itself goes to Cabinet tomorrow.
Yes.
And this is the report, the scrutiny report on the process, basically. I am aware from our forward work programme that the leisure review itself has got a report coming to scrutiny in May. So I don't know what that'll be about until it comes, I suppose. So that'll be the work that's gone on. I don't know. I'm asking, I'm trying to answer a question I don't know the answer to. So what will that report be?
Yeah, I think, Chair, the one point I should have stressed was the work that that officers and the consultants have undertaken around the backlog repairs and maintenance, and the figures required to bring all the centres up to a net zero, which is, I can't remember the actual figure, but it's very large. You know, yes. I don't think it was over 100 million, but it's getting close to that. Perhaps Jenny can clarify that position, but it was a very significant figure.
You'd like me to come in, Chair?
Please do, Jenny.
82 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew it was a big number.
Yes, some sharp intakes of breath there, yes.
But that's going to pale into insignificant once they complete the figures for schools, in my mind.
Okay. Councillor Gary.
Yeah, thanks, Gareth, for presenting that. I think that the report itself is very concise. Obviously, formed part of the membership of the review group, so fully aware of the amount of data and time the officers spent on correlated that, which I think, yeah, is to be commended. Really detailed pieces of work coming out. Great responses to public consultation as well. I still believe it's one of our better ones. But to me, that just shows the sort of the angst within the communities, the worry, the fear that is there, and that uncertainty about what might be happening. We have, as councillors, have seen some directions under sustainable powers of perhaps preferred routes, how we get from where we are to where the authority might want to try and be. And I guess it's just really important for us to really consider that those next phases, not just the next single phase, but those next phases are going to be really critical in our work as councillors, because there's going to be some conversations that really do need to be had and aired, and considerations and facts available to have them. But I guess my actual only point was, are we constraining ourselves in this scrutiny time frame with seeing a report today and it going to cabinet tomorrow, and it's actually happening on both our papers in this meeting? I'm not saying it's a problem, but it doesn't give us a long time to turn around those questions, comments on the reports for cabinet. Obviously, we could do them after and they come back afterwards, but if cabinet have gone through a report, I'm not sure how they get to revisit it again. So that was just more of a personal question around, have we got the timeframes a bit too tight on this one?
Chair, if I may, this report is actually going to the Learning Scrutiny Committee after it goes to cabinet. It's going on Thursday, Friday. So I would share Councillor Gary's concerns.
Okay, any comment there, David? Councillor David Selby.
Sorry, I mean, yes, it's tight. I think part of the issue is we're going to 3 individual scrutiny meetings is unusual on the same report. I think that causes some concern, but I believe that the most important thing is I believe the issues have been well aired now, and I don't think cabinet is going to say anything else that would complicate the issue going forward, if that made sense. Probably not.
Okay. So any other questions or comments on this report? Okay. So I'd like to thank Councillor Gareth Jones for bringing this report to us. And the conclusions are there. An awful lot of information was looked into. There are some suggestions for further figures that would have been helpful. And I guess we all wait for the next paper, which is really the context of what happens next. So thank you.
Yeah, could I make one final point?
Yeah, please do.
Just to say, and I haven't got the exact figures, but as it's progressing, it appears in my mind that all the funding that Powys will be providing in the future to Freedom Leisure will be for the schools' use for their curriculum delivery. So I think that's something that we would need to look at as an ongoing basis. I haven't got the exact figure, but the level of if you want to use the word subsidy from the non-school service is quite low as a percentage of the overall cost.
Okay, so I'm guessing that's something that schools learning and skills scrutiny will be keeping an eye on.
Yeah,
the impact on that service.
And obviously there is a efficiency that's built into the budget for 24-25 for review of the school services usage.
Councillor Rafe.
Thank you, Chair. So just so that I'm clear, the next report that the committee will receive will be from the officer working group. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, the scrutiny working group has now concluded with this report, and it's in the hands of officers now. Yes.
Thanks for confirming.
Yeah. Okay. No more hands up, no more questions there. So the other paper we have before us is the working group for the Heart of Wales transition, and Councillor Carl led on that working group. Unfortunately, he's not with us here today. Fortunately, I was a member of the group, so the paper is there before you. So to explain to our newer councillors who might not be aware, HALPS was a joint business, for want of a better word, between Powys County Council Housing Maintenance Team and Kia, a large building organisation, and they formed this company to deliver housing repairs to the council. And I think the intention was that it would take on private work. Transpired that that wasn't going so well, so the Powys, the organisation was disbanded, and this scrutiny group was looking at the reintegration of the Powys staff back into Powys housing. I think that's right. Have I explained that correctly? So as with the previous one, I have to say the working group were very, very pleased with the amount of information that was brought before us, that officers answered all and every question. Really, we had an in-depth amount of information. We got to meet the employees on the ground to find out what the experience was for them in coming back to work for Powys County Council. And really the main outcomes were, although I think it was a bit of a bumpy ride and that it was quite a challenge for officers, they weren't allocated extra time to do this. They were doing this on top of their normal job. And I think they had a very, very busy and stressful time. I think, Jen, it was probably a bit of a roller coaster for the officers, wasn't it? But overall, the outcome was entirely positive. We didn't find any negatives, I don't think, in the process. Staff were very, very happy to come back under Powys umbrella. They felt they've been treated and respected better as employees, that they were being listened to in terms of how to go about their working day. That the actual improvements to the housing service, we've heard about those from housing service themselves, how they've now got control back on their maintenance program for their housing. Yeah, I don't think there's really anything else to say. Yeah, it was a very positive thing. In fact, there were a number of sort of lessons learnt in how to do it that I think have been carried forward to other working groups. Isn't that right, Jenny? Because it was so successful. Yeah, Councillor Adrian. Sorry, Adrian, you're on mute at the moment.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I was on the group, and Brian was with Carl, and we had a meeting at Newtown Football Club and met the new recruits as such that had come in. It was a very successful meeting. But one thing that came up, and it wasn't probably in the remit of what we were doing, but it is something needs looking at, possibly by scrutiny, was procurement of goods. Now, the lads were telling me that they'd got like credit cards, if you see what I mean, and they'd go around, which is efficient in a way because they would be out at site and they could go to the closest retail and buy something. But I was kind of shocked and thinking, I know how expensive some things are in certain outlets and a lot cheaper in others. And if you're not shopping around, where are we getting value for money? And I was told that there was a reconciliation annually with the major retailers to get it in line with what oppositions would have been charging. So I really think that needs looking at. And there's also mentioned that it'd be a good idea if there was some of the more popular or most used items were kept in a depot somewhere and they just went and picked them up. And that's something probably that they need to be looking at going forward. So that would be a recommendation, I would say, that we had picked up or would like to put forward from being part of that review, that procurement does need looking at and make sure it is efficient. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Adrian. I think what came out of this was looking at the reintegration of the staff into it, but you're right, these points came up. In fact, I think Councillor Carl has already put forward, and it's been accepted, that we're going to have an annual meet with the workforce so that these going forward hiccups in their working practices can be picked up. So I think that'll come under that then, Adrian, because we were told that they were going to be looking at the procurement and seeing if there was something that could be done to improve that process. Are you nodding at me, Jenny? Have I got this right? Yes, Jenny's nodding. Thank you.
Okay.
So yeah, so that event that you had at the football club, I think we're hoping that's going to be an annual event to get to meet the staff on the ground. Yeah.
And the managers, really, that was very important. Seeing the managers, you know, it was a good one. Thank you.
Councillor Bryan, because
Well,
you were involved as well, weren't you, with that?
Yeah, you stole my thunder. I was just going to say we did arrange to, I think, go to Brecon for the next meeting with the staff, and I think as we just going off the subject a little bit, we just had that meeting last Friday in Raider. I think meeting with some of the staff and the management really does good for members and the staff.
Absolutely. It's getting to hear on the ground floor, isn't it? What the experience of the work is, and picking up those little things that perhaps are small problems that cause day-to-day issues, really, and seeing how we can improve on those for them. Yeah. Okay, any other hands up questions about that paper? You've got the paper there before you. There were the recommendations there. I think it was 3 recommendations. And again, this paper is going to Cabinet tomorrow. There isn't another paper coming forward on this as such because it's happened now, it's in-house. There was a second paper that went alongside this that was from the Finance and Audit Committee, and they made their recommendations to Cabinet. What was quite good about this working group, I hope Brian and the others will agree, is that we had members from Audit that sat in on this working group and members of this working group sat with Audit. So there was a lot of cross working to make sure that we'd sort of covered all the bases on this, and it really was an in-depth piece of work. So yeah. No more hands up there. So thank you very much, Jenny, for that. It really was an excellent piece of work, and you were the lead officer really on both of those. So you've had a very busy time. You won't know what to do with yourself now, will you?
I won't. Thank you, Chair. And I'd just like to say, if possible, you know, appreciate the Scrutiny Committee involvement in these processes, because when you're in the midst of it, sometimes it's you get very focused, obviously, on the work, but actually to have that additional insight and challenge at times is very helpful. So appreciate that from both committees.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you. Anybody got any further comments or questions on that before we move on? No, all happy. Lovely. Thank you very much. So the next item on our agenda is our scrutiny work programme going forward. So May is our next meeting, the 20th of May, our meeting proper, and that's when we have our election of vice chair. So anybody fancy that role, have a think about that now. And then we've got that leisure and the car park reviews coming forward, and those are the reviews of the work that officers are undertaking. So I think we're all looking forward to them. The other items on the agenda, they do often change, I'm afraid. We do, as I've said in our review meeting, we do put the agenda items in, but they do swap and change about. So although they look busy at the moment, things can change. But if anybody's got items they would like to put forward for our future working group, you can let myself or Rachel or Carl know. Up a few times in our meetings now, and it's one that the public bring up all the time, is the dreaded potholes and the road condition. So that's something I would like to see a paper come before scrutiny on the condition of our roads. So we've had a survey done of everything under the council, and I'm wondering if there's been a survey of the road condition. So that's something I'd like to see on there, unless anybody objects to that. I should think everybody would be pleased to know where we're going with that and what the work programme for that is going forward. And like I say, if you think of anything else that you would like to see a paper come before scrutiny, then please speak up. Councillor Adrian.
Yeah, so well, further to what I said before, I know you said we're going to follow up with the Hub's review by having another site visit with workers, but I'm particularly interested in, is that procurement rights? So we could have that. I mean, that's a completely different thing, really. Is it in place? Is it efficient? Because it is money, a lot of money.
Yeah, no, that's really good. We'll get that in on that work programme as well. We'll have to have a word with Matt, I think that would be, and Andy, as to how
Well, Andy's left now, but I was hoping he would still be in. He could have answered that for us, and possibly it's something we can work on anyway. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Jenny.
Just to confirm, Chair and other members of the committee, my involvement, as Councillor Angela said, was the transition of Houps back to the council. But as part of that work, there were other work streams, other projects that were ongoing, and procurement was one of those. So I know certainly for housing and for corporate services as well, that's something that they were looking at, and also integrating those with their finance systems. So I'm not entirely sure which stage they're currently at, but I'm sure that over time they will be able to provide information with regards to that, because I know the procurement certainly was something that was being looked at in some detail.
Okay, good, excellent. So we'll have a chat about that, Adrian, and see if we can get that paper before us. So thank you very much for that. So that brings us to the end of the agenda, committee, unless anybody has any further questions or comments you've not had opportunity to raise so far. All quiet, everybody's happy, that's good news. Okay, well, we'll bring the formal part of our meeting to the end, and then if the committee could just stay online for 5 minutes, and we'll have our committee reflections. And just to say thank you very much to Jenny, Kath and Rachel behind the scenes there. For joining us in this meeting, and to Matt and Andy and Councillor Matthew, who've already left us. But thank you all, and goodbye. I bring this meeting to an end.